Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of Coffee with Carl. I am your host, Carl Zoellner. I'm one of the attorneys with Anderson Business Advisors. And today I want to answer the question that was posed on how are my foreign investments taxed? The sort of lawyers and squirmy CPA answer is going to be depends. And that is the answer because ultimately, when we start looking at taxation of foreign income, it becomes a little bit more complex. What I'll tell you is, in most cases, it makes the most sense to have it hit a C corporation domestically if you're earning abroad but receiving the funds locally. The C corporation, number one, usually has a flat tax of that 21% for any retained earnings. And then usually, if we pair that with an S corporation at some point, we can sort of shuttle the funds around and see where it's most effectively hit, depending on how much money you need out of those foreign investments or foreign funds you have access to. The taxation will change depending on if there is tax treaties and things like that. But those things are important along the way to note that there's some variation and some variation of strategy that can get you different percentages. From an example standpoint, I recently worked with a client who is in entertainment and earns income abroad, and we found out that if his income lands in his corporation here in the U.S., basically the effective tax rate ends up being about 13%, which is about 8% less than what it would be domestically if he was earning in that same corporation. So we were pretty impressed, or I was pretty impressed to learn that fact, and also pretty impressed to know that we were able to figure that out for him. So just as like I said, sort of an FYI or something that we can do for our clients, if there's something we can look up and help you with, we're happy to do it. There are some things we will turn down just because ultimately we're not going to be, if we're not going to be proficient in it, we want to get you with somebody who will ultimately be able to help you. But ultimately, there's lots of options out there, is what I'm getting at, as far as international taxation on income from foreign countries. Even to the extent that if you reside in a foreign country and are investing here in the US, there's some different options. Most commonly, as well, I've seen Singapore pop up more recently, as well as Hong Kong for their preferable tax treatments of different types of investments. So I wouldn't avoid them. Let's put it this way. I just want everybody to know that when we talk about them, there are some options we can look at, and there are some options that we're not the best fit for at the moment. So we would say for the ones that aren't a fit, we'll try to find you someone who can help and then work with them with your overall structure. Because domestically, we are the best in the business, and we can basically make your tax returns and your investments sort of sing for you. But yes, the foreign investments tends to be a little bit more complex. And as we're growing in that area, we'll become more proficient. But there are some additional questions and some different pieces of our overall strategy that we can use to deal with some of the unknown factors of that. But currently, the best sort of advice on the matter is you got to work with somebody on the foreign side of the investment. You can work with us on the domestic side, and then we can usually put a plan together for you. So, from that perspective, that's what I would say when it comes to looking at things like how are your foreign investments taxed. Like I said, first question is always, is there a tax treaty? Most times, if there is, it's going to be fairly favorable tax treatment. If for some reason there's not a tax treaty, you then have to take the second step of saying, okay, well, then what does it look like when you recognize those funds domestically in the US versus if you were to recognize them over in the home country where the income is being earned? So that's what we look at, I guess, or at least what I look at when I speak to my clients about their foreign investments. It's becoming more and more popular with our clients that they have foreign investments. Like I said, at least in countries as well, like India, where if I'm putting together, say, another client I spoke with this week, or lead to be a client, if we can accept them in the near future here, is they're actually setting up a makeup company and need to work within India and have contracts over there. So that's a good example to say this is we're unfortunately not able to advise on the contract between the company and India. However, that's what sort of a M&A or business attorney will help with, and then we can go from there. So ultimately, that's sort of how that scenario plays out. Is I don't we'll see how that all works out. For the most part, what I needed to make sure for the client here is they want to take on public funding. So we will need to set up something for them. It will ultimately be a Delaware corporation in that perspective, so that they can issue a bunch of shares and sell them off. So that's the overall idea. At the time, we'll take a second look just to make sure everything's in the places it needs to be. But like I say, when I can in these, I like to provide sort of some client examples, because this is the stuff we work with every day. And as one of my favorite sayings I'm told is, you don't know what you don't know. So I'm happy to, as I learn as well, because I think I'll ever be done learning. But as I learn, I'm happy to share some of those lessons with y'all too. So until next time, that's it for Coffee with Carl, and we will catch you on the next episode. Thanks, everyone.